Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video, man. And today we're going to be reacting to Pepsi. We finally going to react to Pepsi. This is by Company Man. For those of y'all that don't know, this is Company Man. If y'all trying to figure out his YouTube channel is Company Man. Some of y'all should know about him. Some of y'all probably don't. It is what it is. But his name is Company Man. And he does these researches on these companies, how they blew up, how their sales are, how they fell off, how they went into decline, how they went bankrupt, how they ain't here no more. You know, this has been a pretty good series so far. Y'all been really rocking with this series, and I appreciate y'all for sticking around with me in this series. And we just gonna keep it rocking. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Pepsi is a brand that just about everybody knows throughout the world because their products are sold in over 200 countries and territories.
Facts.
It's a company that you already know is big, but I'd be willing to bet that they're even bigger than most people realize. You may make the mistake in thinking that it's all the Pepsi brand or all soda. Well, that is not the case, and I'm making this video to show you otherwise. Consider this, a company that sells over $1 billion a year would be pretty big, right? Well, PepsiCo is the owner of 23 separate brands that all exceed that figure, in addition to numerous others. It all combines to over $70 billion in revenue, consistently placing them toward the top of the Fortune 500 list, meaning they're one of the biggest companies out there. For today, I want to outline 5 of their sales categories that I think best demonstrate their size and diversity over the years. Some of them are unexpected, while others no longer exist, but they've all helped to shape PepsiCo into the globally significant company that they are today. Starting where else besides beverages, because as you may have guessed, it all started with Pepsi itself. It goes back to the late 1800s. A pharmacist in North Carolina that went by the name Doc Bradham created the original Pepsi in his drugstore. Coca-Cola was newly popular and he made something somewhat similar to capitalize on that demand. Originally, he called it Brad's drink, but quickly changed it to Pepsi Cola. Once he had that formula down, he started a business around it that operated in a very similar way to Coca-Cola. He would make the syrup at his drugstore and sell it to the people who operated the soda fountains, where they would be responsible for mixing it with soda water and selling it to the customer. After a few years of that, Pepsi was gaining enough momentum for him to go full-time with it. He closed his drugstore and rented out a dedicated space to make the syrup. He then started franchising these bottling companies so it could be widely sold by the bottle rather than just at the fountain, and by the 1910s, he had built a sizable cola company. Here's where the trouble happened. World War I caused a lot of issues with the prices of sugar, which of course was impactful for a soda company. In short, after rationing, the prices skyrocketed. Bradham bought a bunch of it at those high prices in fear that it would jump even higher. Well, in reality, the prices quickly sank to something like 10% of what they were, and he had wasted a lot of money. It's such a sad story for him because he was forced to file for bankruptcy, sell the trademark and the formula and whatever else remained of the company, and return to his original career as a pharmacist. That second owner who bought all of it was also unsuccessful in his attempt at the business, despite trying for almost a decade. In 1931, he filed for bankruptcy, and it was the third owner that was finally successful with the product. So there you go. For anyone struggling to get their product out there, maybe you could find relief in the fact that Pepsi went through 2 bankruptcies before most people had ever even heard of it. But this third owner, he was fitting. His name was Charles Guth, and he was the president of a large chain of candy stores that would also sell soda. Once they bought the brand, he stopped selling Coca-Cola and started selling Pepsi Cola, which obviously helped with sales. But the real genius, and what I think propelled them to that next level, was their decision to sell it in 12-ounce bottles for 5 cents. They were twice as big as what Coca-Cola was selling for the same price, and considering it was during the Great Depression, that was a promotion that won over a lot of people. They even had
Y'all was drinking good back in them days. Well, 5 cents for a bottle of Coke, man. What? A Pepsi or whatever? Man, that's some good old, man. Y'all had it good back then, man.
this catchy jingle to promote it that was the first to be played nationally over the radio. Pepsi Cola hits the spot, 12 whole ounces, that's a lot, twice as much for a nickel too. Pepsi Cola is the drink for you. Alright, enough about Pepsi itself. That was kind of the springboard of the entire company, and the unlikely story of how it amazingly survived all of those shaky beginnings. But I have a lot more to talk about, so I need to pick up the pace here. Let me go through some of the more significant beverages, like Diet Pepsi. That one is significant because when it was introduced in 1964, it was the first nationally distributed diet soda, a full 18 years before Diet Coke was introduced, though they did sell a diet soda called Tab that was already introduced, but I'm getting sidetracked here. That same year, they introduced Mountain Dew, which quickly became their second best-selling soda. In the 1990s, they even surpassed Dr. Pepper as the best-selling non-cola product in all of the United States, and I don't think I have to tell you about all of the colorful variations that they've introduced since. In
Code Red,
the lemon lime sodas sold
Baja
by other
Blast,
like
Pitch
Sprite
Black,
and 7-Up were becoming really popular, so Pepsi introduced Slice. It sold really well initially and stood out from the others because it was the first of its kind to contain real fruit juice. Slice has since been discontinued, and the current soda that they sell to fill that role as of 2003 would be Sierra Mist.
Ew, get that out of my face.
They acquired Mug Root Beer, which I wanted to mention because it's their main root beer offering.
I got a love-hate relationship with root beer. I love it with ice cream, you know, root beer floats and all that. I love it with the ice cream, but root beer just by itself, nah, Chief, nah.
Hear me good, nigga. I'm here to double down. That shit is a 2-pack of ass. The fuck are you talking about? That shit stinks.
I throw that shit up in a heartbeat, man. I can't do no root beer by itself. It's got to be a root beer float, or it's got to be like a special kind of root beer. You know, like they have different flavors of root beer. I forgot the flavors, but they do have different flavors of root beer that I like. I just don't fuck with root beer by itself. I have to drink root beer. The only way I can consume root beer is if it's with ice cream. That's the only way I can do it.
And I like the dog that's on the label. In 1997, they launched Aquafina that quickly became the country's top-selling bottled water.
The most dangerous water you could ever drink.
Here's a big one. In 1998, they acquired the juice maker Tropicana for $3.3 billion. It was their largest acquisition to that point.
So they just buying up everybody. God damn, Pepsi, you just buying up everything. You buying up Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC. God damn.
And instantly made them the #1.
They pretty much a monopoly at this point. Pepsi is a monopoly. I see why they host a halftime show at the Super Bowl now. I see why now. I really do. It makes all the sense now. It makes all the sense now. It makes all the sense now. I never knew. They got a fucking monopoly on the goddamn. They got a fucking monopoly, man. This is ridiculous. This is fucking ridiculous. They got a fucking monopoly.
#1 provider of juice in the country. Tropicana was much bigger than Minute Maid, who was owned by Coca-Cola, so that victory was likely a big motivator for them to make that deal. In 2007, Pepsi added to their juice segment by buying the brand Naked as well, but in August of 2021, they announced that they would be selling all of it, but would remain 39% owner of the joint venture that would be created from the sale. In 2020, they bought Rockstar Energy for $3.85 billion. They already had a distribution agreement with them since 2009, so here they just bought the whole thing to complement their Mountain Dew branded energy drinks like Kickstart and Game Fuel. Speaking of distribution agreements, over the years, Pepsi's made deals in the form of strategic alliances or joint ventures as far as marketing, distribution, or manufacturing involving a number of other recognizable brands. These would include Ocean Spray, Lipton, Dr. Pepper, those Starbucks drinks that you see at the store, among many others.
Starbucks is overrated.
Altogether, these beverages account for 45% of their sales, so something like $30 billion, making it extremely large, but also meaning that it's not even half of their entire company. The remaining 55% comes from my next two categories, starting with snacks. Now, the biggest part of this category would easily be Frito-Lay.
They own Frito-Lay?
Frito and Lay were two separate chip companies that merged together. In addition to the two obvious brands, they were also the makers of Cheetos, Ruffles, and Rolled Gold. Then 4 4 years after the Frito-Lay merger, that company merged with Pepsi-Cola, officially creating the PepsiCo company that we still have today. Pepsi was looking to grow and diversify, while Frito-Lay felt that teaming up with Pepsi would help their international operations. But likely the biggest reason behind the merger, and the most relevant one today, is the complementary nature between the products. Here we have salty snacks and a drink to go with them. They figured that that tie-in would lead to more effective marketing that could help sell each other's products.
Yeah, in the hood.
The FTC didn't allow any kind of marketing in that way in fears of a monopoly and creating an unfair advantage. But in 1999, they did launch this sneaky initiative where they set out to convince grocery stores to sell the soft drinks right next to the snacks. Today, Frito-Lay North America accounts for 26% of their revenue, but 46% of their operating profits. So it's interesting to point out that Pepsi makes more income from these snacks than they do from their beverages. The remainder of their sales comes from other consumer foods. These are other brands that you see at the grocery store that you may not realize are made by Pepsi. Most of it comes from an acquisition that they made in 2001. It was the biggest one that they had ever made when they paid around $14 billion to buy Quaker Oats. They quickly became really involved in the market of breakfast foods by taking control of the obvious oatmeal stuff, but also the breakfast cereals of Life and Cap'n Crunch, in addition to the Aunt Jemima brand of syrup and waffle
they had to
that
get rid of
has
her.
been rebranded.
R.I.P. Aunt
There were
Jemima.
also some other random brands that were
Rice-A-Roni?
included, like Rice-A-Roni. But
Damn!
their main motivation for making this deal was the inclusion of the brand Gatorade.
Oh,
The
damn,
big
they got
emerging
Gatorade too?
market was
God
thought to be around
damn!
carbonated drinks, and this was among the biggest brands in that market. Going into the deal, Pepsi controlled about 18% of that market, while Coca-Cola was barely beating them at 21%. But this acquisition put them all the way up to 33%. So if you're at the grocery store and you're not even in the beverage or snack aisle, it still shouldn't be too hard to find something that comes from PepsiCo. So that's what the company looks like today. It's mostly drinks, snacks, and breakfast foods, but I do have two more notable categories to talk about that were significant to them in the past. The first one of these being fast food, because believe it or not, PepsiCo was once one of the largest owners of fast food chains in the country. Listen to this. In 1977, they bought Pizza Hut.
Yep.
Then, in 1978,
Taco Bell.
they bought Taco Bell.
KFC.
It was within like a few months of each other, so they were being aggressive with it. A big motivation there was to give them places to sell their soda. People drink a lot of soda at those places, and the best way to ensure that Taco Bell sold Pepsi products rather than Coke or something else was to buy Taco Bell. In 1986, they added to that segment when they bought Kentucky Fried Chicken for about $850 million, meaning they own 3 of the country's top 10 fast food restaurants. Going into that deal, KFC did sell Coca-Cola products, but you better believe that they instantly switched over once Pepsi had something to say about it. It was incredible. Each one of them was a leader in their market, and even though they were always trailing McDonald's in terms of sales, they were consistently beating them in number of locations. Those were the 3 biggest chains, but throughout the 1990s, they continued adding even more to that segment. Some of the more notable ones being the hamburger chain Hot and Now, California Pizza Kitchen. They bought this Italian restaurant called East Side Mario's. At their peak in 1997, PepsiCo owned 29,000 restaurant locations, but it was distracting. The fast food market is intense. It's very competitive and constantly changing, so Pepsi felt that they would be better off exiting that market altogether so they can better focus on everything else that they had going on. Plus, much like with Frito-Lay, I don't think that they were helping their beverage sales quite as much as they had hoped. It actually kind of backfired in a way. Sure, everything they owned was serving Pepsi products, but the fact that they owned all of these restaurants was making other restaurants less likely to sell Pepsi products. It was like buying from the competition. If Popeye's Chicken were to sell Pepsi, it would be like they were supporting KFC. Do you see what I mean? It was a weird situation that they created, but in 1997, they took all of their core restaurants and spun them off into their own company while selling the rest of the smaller ones in separate deals. They do maintain relationships with many of them, but for the last few decades, that's as far as it goes. For my final category, I'm just going to call it other, so I can mention a couple unexpected things from the past.
Etc., etc.
Around 1970, and the one and only time in their history, Pepsi was looking to diversify beyond food and drinks, which resulted in some, I guess you would call, ill-advised acquisitions. Notably, they bought a moving company called North American Van Lines and a sporting goods company called Wilson. So in a video,
So now they
about how
own the
big
NBA
Pepsi
now
is
too,
and once was,
damn.
how can I not mention that they once provided the official balls for both the NBA and the NFL? hell. Then in the mid-1980s, they refocused their attention back on the food and drinks, sold these unrelated companies, and looking back at it now, it's kind of like a weird little point in their history. Thank you for watching.
Alrighty. I didn't know Pepsi owned it. Pepsi owns everything at this point. I'm not even... God damn, man. Shout out to Pepsi, man. I don't fuck with Pepsi. I don't fuck with Coke either. I'm a Sprite guy. I'm a Sprite, Dr. Pepper type of guy. I fuck with Mountain Dew every now and again, but it depends on the flavors, though. I don't just fuck with the regular Mountain Dew. I like the flavor. I like the different flavors of Mountain Dew. But that's as far as I go with sodas. I don't really fuck with Coca-Cola. Only time I drink a Pepsi or a Coke or a Coca-Cola, that's if I'm mixing it with some Hennessy or some Crown Royal or something. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You know, if I'm trying to get fucked up, then, you know, I drink some Pepsi and some Coca-Cola. But outside of that, if I ain't trying to get fucked up, I ain't really finna drink that shit. Make my tummy hurt. But anyways, though, that's just gonna about do it for this one. I'll see y'all in the next video. Till then, peace out.